EAGLES, Eagles.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome into a Thursday edition of Birds 365, a game day edition of Birds 365. Johnny Mack, the Philadelphia Eagles 2025 season officially kicks off tonight with the first preseason game of the year. Johnny Mack, how you doing on this Thursday morning, brother?
Doing well. Gearing up. Yeah, game day. Doesn't feel like a game day.
No, it doesn't.
Not the same.
It doesn't.
Not quite the same as.
No, I didn't wake up and get that game day feeling like you normally get, J Mac. But I'm still excited nonetheless.
Yeah. Well, I think if you go into it the right way as a fan, and concentrate on younger players, and I think it could be fun for you. But if you want to see stars, you're probably going to be disappointed.
Yeah, no stars, more of a dress rehearsal for all of the, a lot of the coaches and stuff like that. But, John, you just mentioned it. If you go into it the right way with the fan, let's get some Johnny Mack advice to start the show today. How do you go into it for a fan watching this game? What's the right thing to look at? What's the right thing to take away from games like these? I know it's not much, obviously, admittedly, but there is some things I think you can take from them. How do you do it, John?
Focus on, just as I said, the younger players, the guys who are, taking a step forward, the guys, rookies, obviously, who you want to see. They need to get some live reps and see how they, one thing Vic said this week, you don't have to tackle in practice unless you're Jod Campbell occasionally, but, it's, are you going to make the tackle? Is quarterback going to break the tackle, or is, running back, receiver, whatever, yards after catch. So all of that's important, the live reps. And second year players, Johnny Wilson and Isaiah Smith at wide receiver, they got to step up and play better football in a live environment. So it's all youth. And most of the Eagles, even their star players, a lot of them are youth. So, but they're going to be very cautious with certain guys. I mean, AJ and Zach haven't even been practicing. They're not playing, obviously.
Yeah.
Anybody with any sort of accomplishment on their resume they're going to be very cautious with.
Yeah, we'll run through that, kind of get a look at who we think is going to play and who is not. We'll preview the game in hour number 2 today. Everybody, we'll talk to Mark Farzetta. Looking forward to talking to Farzy. I know he wrapped up his morning show not long ago, so he'll be with us at 9:20 in that spot. Looking forward to talking to Farz. Johnny Mack, as we go out on the field, just kind of gave some of the things to look at going out there. Let's kind of run through it. There's a couple names that I think are a little bit harder to decipher whether they play tonight. And it's not like I don't want to spend all our time today on who plays, who doesn't, because it's not that big of a question. I think there's a lot more substance that matters. But like a guy like Tyler Steen, we talked about him because there's no one else playing, but does he get reps? Does a guy like Jalix Hunt get reps, who doesn't have a lot of experience, but is presumed at this point to be the starter? Nolan Smith, I mean, you talk about it. He had 9 good games last year. Does he get playing time? I don't anticipate him. But how do you gauge some of the guys that are like probably going to start, but also don't have all that much playing time or all that much on their resume?
Well, one, I mean, it's a lot easier to project with Vic than the offensive side. Vic is probably going to lean towards playing the young players at least a little bit. Not Nolan, but somebody like Jalix, I would lean toward a yes. With Tyler Steen, I could he use the reps? Of course, but I don't know the value of it if the other 4 guys are not out there. Because one thing about offensive line is chemistry and all that. So if you've made the decision that he's the starter, and Nick begged off that on Tuesday, whenever he talked to us, I forget what day it is as usual, but last time he spoke to us, he begged off of that because he doesn't have to name starters, but nobody else is getting first team reps. Matt Pryor got a couple, but that's about it, maybe 2. So I don't see the value if the other four guys aren't on the field.
Yeah, for him, I would keep him out. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So, could he use the reps, of course, but he's not going to be playing next to Drew Kendall and Matt Pryor if it's right tackle or Darian Kennard. So, um, I would lean towards no with him, but we'll see. I mean, I
I
don't think.
think that's actually one unit where those backups might look better than better than we thought. They're not going to look like the starters, that's for sure. But I don't think they're going to be half bad if you line
Yeah,
up.
well, they're probably going to be better than the Bengals
Yeah, that's
backup
what I'm
defensive
saying.
front. Because the Eagles are pretty deep on
Shit,
the
they might be better than the Bengals starters.
not the defensive. No,
No, the offensive line.
Well, Hendrick's not there, but
Offensive line, I meant.
Hendrickson.
Not defense. Offensive line.
No, offensive line. I thought you meant offensive line against Bengals defensive front.
No, I was talking
Bengals-
about like as compared to
Bengals-
what the Bengals starters would be.
If the Bengals starters defensive front wise were out there, that'd be a shit show.
Yeah, that'd be a shit show.
Yeah. But Hendrickson's not even, he's holding in, as they say in the modern NFL, as he tries to get his deal done. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal. One Tanner McKee is probably the most notable. He may have given a little hint that he's going to play. Eagles social media put out, they did a thing with the Madden ratings, which is my favorite thing, and the players' reaction to their Madden ratings, and Tanner's was pretty poor because he doesn't play. So the deep dive evaluation of Madden says he should be low, and he said tune in Thursday night, giving him some shit. So, but even that, I'm like, if they put Tanner McKee in, it's going to be a starting level. So he's going to get a series or two. It's like, who cares? What's the value in that? I don't know, but people find value in it. But I think the vast majority of the game is going to be Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and then second half probably Kyle McCord at quarterback for the Eagles. And, that should be exciting. You got a local kid, Kyle McCord. So people should be fired up to see him play in the second half.
I am. I like Kyle McCord. Probably a little bias on my part as a St. Joe's Prep graduate myself, and Kyle McCord, obviously a pretty good St. Joe's Prep player. So I love this. Looking forward to seeing Kyle McCord tonight. John, the interesting part, by the way, I'll give everybody the update. TV scheduled tonight, guys. Locally, it's on NBC 10 in Philadelphia. If you're in Cincinnati, it's on Fox 19 in Cincinnati, and then it will be on the NFL Network as a replay. So if you're not in the local, I don't know how you're going to watch the game, but 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff, and then we'll be watching that. I'll be streaming some live here on the channel. We'll do a little pregame hit with J-Mac and a little postgame hit. Not long. All right, we're not going to get too bogged down with this game, but we will get our key takeaways from it, and that'll be good to see. John, the Bengals are expected to play a couple starters in this game. I don't know what that means in terms of how much or how long. Probably, I don't know, one series for the Bengals starters, but that should be a good test, John, for that backup defense. Here comes Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. What are you going to do to stop them? Will that be a 3-and-out drive, or will that be a 12-play, 70-yard, 8-minute drive to start the Bengals preseason?
Well, you never know, as you pointed out. The problem with the Bengals is the offensive line. So, if the left guard misses a block, you could have a 3-and-outs. But, if they get settled in, you're probably
Which means
in trouble.
what? We'd have a little Uchilari or Uche. Ojulari or Uche action.
Perhaps. And fans will get fired up by that if it were to happen. If they get settled in, you're probably going to be in for some issues. It might look ugly. But I wouldn't get too worried about that either for the same reason. So, yeah, I wouldn't be expecting too much, and I don't know why the Bengals are doing things the way they're doing things, but A lot of teams play their starters a little bit in the preseason still. I don't see the value in it. I've changed over the years after seeing the Eagles do it, I admit, because they've been so successful.
Yeah.
I think they do it the right way. And,
I think,
you know,
John, I think the Eagles' success has been so prominent. There's almost not really a case to make an argument against doing it the way they do it. You don't have to do it their way, but you can't really make the argument that they do it the wrong way based on what the success that they've had and really the health and everything, that the way it all adds up.
yeah, I think it's hard to break those old thinking, and I've been around for a long. And well, you got to get the pads on. You got to knock off the rust, and I thought that way for a lot of years, to be honest. And I'm like, well, really? Somebody pointed. You know what it was? Somebody pointed out to me, college kids show up day one. They don't play preseason games, and I'm like, I never thought about it
Yeah.
before. I'm like, they have a lot of scrimmages. They have, they're preparing, obviously, but they don't
Yeah,
play.
they don't do much. Yeah, they don't do
They
that
don't
many.
play. They don't play preseason games. They just practice and then they go play.
Yeah.
I that registered with me, and I'm like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. And that's the way the NFL has gone. And I think they, and again, some teams, a lot of teams, certain quarterbacks we talked about like to play a little bit. I think it's more of a mental thing for them. I don't think it's helpful that much. It's when I asked Nick about Tanner McKee. It's like, well, if we're putting more value on, basically paraphrasing what he said, if we're putting more value on preseason reps with anybody, then we're not doing our job in practice and all that stuff. And I know it's frustrating for fans because they don't get to see practice that like they used to.
You're right.
For the most part, unless you're a marketing partner of the Eagles. But it is what it is. And those Cleveland joint practices coming up next week are going to be much more important than this game. And unfortunately, fans got to pay for it. Pay for parking, pay for everything else.
Yeah, I saw somebody was selling the I guess the Sundays, John, the open practice. Is that right, for the open to the fans?
Sunday night. Yeah.
I saw some tweet last night. Some people are flipping their tickets on the open market because they sold out. I'm like, you gotta love Eagles fans, man. Johnny Mac, let's get into a couple
questions. They sold out the open practice.
Yeah, that's what they put out last night. Yeah.
I'd be surprised if that place is full. They usually.
I don't think they open up the whole stadium, right?
Yeah. That's probably it. They probably sell 30, 40.
Yeah, right. That's what I think it is. I don't think they open up the entire stadium, but they did put out a tweet last night that we sold out the opening practice, and then I saw some account posted up they're being flipped for like $50 on the open market on the on the aftermarket. They were $10 tickets, which is pretty funny, but we'll see how that all shakes out. That should be good. I always like to hear from the fans in the chat who go down there to see what they think. John,
they'll pay $50 for an open.
No,
practice.
Don't pay $50. If you got it for 10, that's good though.
Yeah.
All right, John. A couple of Eagles I want to talk about that have. I think I don't want to say most approved because I don't really think that comment makes sense when you're talking about a preseason game. But I do think there are certain players that will have a chance to see tonight that matter because they're presumed to have an impact on the starting roster right now. Now it's early. That doesn't mean they're all going to. I mean, think about this time last year. We probably would have said, "Oh, I want to see Devin White because he's supposed to be a starter this year." Well, he wasn't a starter, so it can all change. But there's a couple names, and I want you to give me some of yours. But the first name that comes to mind for me would be, well, really two, but Sidney Brown. Like I want to see Sidney Brown. Wasn't a starter last year, didn't really get many reps. He had a decent rookie campaign when he played, and then he had the injury. Right now, the leader in the clubhouse to be the starting safety on the football team, I would say probably Sidney Brown, number one for me. And then number two would be, take your pick on Adoree Jackson or Keely Ringo. I think Keely Ringo is more important because he's the young player that the Birds want to win the position. But those are the two guys I think are, I'm watching them. I want to see what they're doing. I want to see the way they're playing. I want to see the way they're approaching the game. I don't know how long they'll play, but I do think those are two guys where, they're like in the weird bubble spot, John, of like they're going to be the starters, but they're not the entrenched starters. So they still have something to prove. They still have something to gain and something to lose as compared to, A.J. Brown lines up. I don't think you're worried about anything, So those are two guys that I'm interested in. Any other names for you, John? And then what do you think of those two?
Well, yeah, I mean, the competition on the defensive sides, Big wants them to compete. So, if he's got his way, and I don't see why they wouldn't give him his way, those guys are gonna play. Um, and for somebody like Caley, especially, he's got to start showing up a little bit more and being a little bit more consistent. Um, with Sydney, a lot of it has to do with Makuba and where he is now. He was back at practice on Tuesday. He was limited, but he did some team drills. So if it were full, I'd feel more comfortable saying he'd play, but he was limited. But that's something to keep an eye on to see if he plays, number one. And obviously, if he plays, he's got a lot of room to make up and needs to play well. So he's one of the more interesting guys because A, when he gets back, he's in a competition, and B, I don't know if he's going to play or not because he missed 6 practices from a team drill standpoint and was back limited on Tuesday. So he's probably the most interesting one. And then obviously I think people are going to be excited to see Jihad Campbell, who's going to get some playing time. Probably, if you go all the way back unexpectedly to the start of camp, we didn't think he'd be ready this early. And all of a sudden, Zach Bond's not going to play. And you're going to see Trotter and Campbell and also Small Munden, because that's been an interesting and how they utilize it. Because they, in practice, Small comes in a lot of, passing situations as a sort of nickel linebacker or high leverage linebacker, did a lot of red zone work in coverage. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, for me, it's the competition on deep. And that's been the whole training camp because offensively, it's everybody's so entrenched. And there's a couple things layered. Like I said, Johnny Wilson and I Smith versus, is Elijah Cook's going to continue to show up like he has in practice? Deeper roster, in the second half. Darius Cooper's a guy I'm very interested to see, undrafted wide receiver who's had a great camp. So on offense, it's like backups. I'm sure our buddy will be looking heavily at Harrison Bryant versus Kylan Granson. That battle, that heavyweight battle. And then, there's just not a lot of, obviously you're not going to see Saquon. So you're going to see a lot of A.J. Dillon, a lot of Will Shipley. You can see where that is. Unfortunately, Montrell Johnson got banged up. He's probably not going to play. So in the second half, and obviously the quarterbacks are somewhat interesting, as I already mentioned with McCord. But offensively,
I hope Tanner plays, but I don't know if he will or not.
Well, he kind of hinted he was, like I said, but if he does play, I think it's like 1 or 2 series. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And a lot of people point back to last season in Baltimore, which was the opening preseason game. And the Eagles were going to use their starters on offense. But remember what they were coming off of. And then it was a rainy day and they nixed it. So number one, they immediately nixed it because the field was a little bit slick. And they said, yeah, we're not going to do that. But remember, they were coming off the collapse.
Right.
They weren't coming off winning the Super Bowl. So, there was more urgency to, now there's not as much urgency, to put it mildly. So, and again, if you're not going to have Lane out there, if you're not going to have Jordan Mailata, if you're certainly not going to have the quarterback out there.
I'm not putting Steen out there.
You're obviously not going to have Saquon. AJ's banged up with a hamstring, so he's not going to play. So if AJ's not going to play, you're really going to put DeMonte out there. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. Some interesting battles there that we'll be watching on defense. You brought up Jihad Campbell. I wonder how much Jihad will play tonight. I mean, coming off the injury, I know he's been basically a full participant in everything, and he's much ahead of schedule in that regard. But I don't know. Do you kind of want to bubble wrap your first round pick? Do you want to play him? I'm sure Vic wants to play him. I'm sure Howie wants him in bubble wrap. That'll be
that's a loggerhead said because Vic wants him to play. I mean,
I know Vic wants him to play.
He needs reps, and Nick made a point that that's not Vic's decision, so that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, did you make anything of that comment? No, right?
A little bit. I mean, a little bit of stay in your lane.
Yeah, I got that vibe too.
A little bit of staying. Nick putting down the foot, so to speak. And
Vic, I have no issue with, by the way.
No, I have no issue with it. Yeah. I have no issue with Vic either. He's pushing, and because he wants to get the team ready, and sometimes he pushes too far, and they gotta put the foot down. I
noticed a couple of those comments this year from Vic. I mean, he made.
Oh, you get it out. He does a passive aggressive. We don't practice enough in every single press conference.
Yeah, but that's one. I mean, I know he's going to say that. I mean, I feel like there's been a couple specific calls to Howie and to Nick this summer where you could maybe. I don't know if you project forward, maybe you could see where that could come to a head. But I said the other day, look, I love Vic. He's a great defensive coordinator, but he's not the head coach and he's not the GM. And when he was a head coach, he didn't have success. And be a great defensive coordinator, but stay in your lane. Like I don't want to say it to the point where I would sound like I'm bashing on Vic Fangio. But
I don't have a problem with him not staying in his lane, but when he goes too far out of his lane, I don't have a problem with the head coach putting him back in the lane. So I think it's good that he pushes them. Look, they practice more now.
Yeah, that's true.
And they did before Vic got here. That's because Vic's here. Now, they don't practice to the level that he would like, but he's already pushed them a little bit further. And so I think it's a good back and forth. Conflict is not always a bad thing. Sometimes if you don't have a little, AJ talks about that all the time. You got to have, during the passing struggles last year, you got to have those difficult discussions is the way he described it. If you just go, whatever, nothing's going to get fixed. So, but somebody's got to be in charge. In the case of the roster, Howie's in charge. In the case of, the football team on game day, Nick's in charge. So somebody's got to be in charge. And sometimes if you're in charge, you got to put your foot down.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We'll continue to break it all down. I mentioned we have Mark Farzetta in hour number 2. Good to see everybody in here today. Preseason game number 1. All right, August 7th. It's kicking off tonight at 7:30. I mentioned if you're in Philly, NBC 10, and then I did see a couple comments in the chat. You can watch it on NFL Plus. So for those who subscribe to NFL Plus, you'll be able to watch the game tonight. Good stuff. Johnny Mac, let's get to one of our chats here this morning. TK, member for 12 months. TK, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. He says, good morning, Zander and J-Mac. You guys are the best in the business. Look at that. Nice compliment early here. Don't catch you live very often, but today's the rare occasion I have the time. Love the insight provided on the show. TK, thank you, brother. That's the whole purpose of the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I always like that. I got a nice email, by the way, which is rare. Mainly hate mail, but I got a nice.
Do you get it? Do you really get a lot of hate mail? I mean, do people really have to go out of their way to try?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because I get hate mail too, but I get it for different reasons, and I'm like, whatever, fuck off, fuck off.
Yeah, I got a lot of hate mail, but I got.
You got a good email though. That's a good thing. Well, from one of our great viewers.
I don't know. Yeah, well, yeah, he said he loves the show, so I assume he's a viewer. Yeah, that makes sense. But anyway, he wanted to thank me for my work, and he and his dad would listen to the show, and his dad passed away, so it was nice they shared that together. So
wow, that's cool. That's very cool. Yeah, sometimes, John, you make a bigger impact than you realize. When we're doing a 2-hour Eagles show here. But Good stuff. Appreciate that. Appreciate everybody for being here this morning. We'll take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll dive into some of the nitty-gritty on this game. John, it's almost harder to do a preseason game show than it is to do a training camp show, because everything kind of matters, or at least a little more, on the practice field. You go to training
It
camp.
really does.
Oh,
I hate to break it to people, but
I know,
really
it's brutal. I mean, even you said it though. You're like, yeah, today I'm going to be asking a bunch of questions to a bunch of people who probably aren't going to be here very long.
Yeah. And then I corrected myself, because now even that, because the practice squad is so large now, you know, they get to keep essentially 70 players when you count in the international exemption for Lake and Bakali. So 70 of these guys are probably still, or, you know, they generally go out of the organization to pick up a couple guys, but close to 70 of these guys are going to be here still after the final cut. So even that is not as exciting as it used to be, at least from the standpoint of trying to figure out the roster. Because now the bigger part is, and I talk about it a lot, is the manipulation. That's the hard part. Like, and that's where preseason comes into, because, and you saw this with Eli Ricks a couple of years ago. When you look at guys at the back end of the draft class, like Cam Williams has not stood out at all. Antoine Powell-Ryland has not stood out at all. But if they play well in preseason, that's where it complicates things, because in the games, because if Howie thinks somebody might claim them, he's going to play those games where, all right, let me cut the veteran who doesn't have to go through waivers and do the backroom deal and say, hey, listen, we're doing this because we need to keep this guy off waivers, but we're going to bring you back, and if we need somebody to play, it's going to be you, that type of thing.
Right.
So those guys, if they play well in the preseason, that could be really meaningful for them to be on the initial 53. Whereas if Howie feels comfortable enough that they'll get through waivers, you know, he'll just waive them and bring them back to the practice squad. So that's the difficulty in trying to figure out the roster now in the modern era.
Yeah, we'll see how that all shakes out. Antoine, I agree. Antoine said 61 on Madden for Tanner is an insult. I know we're not a Madden rating show.
Madden.
That's egregious. Are you kidding me? They put Kyle McCord higher than Tanner McKay. What is going on?
The deep dive evaluation of Madden ratings.
That's some bullshit, though, John. How do you? I mean, even just if you just fucking wrote out the rank.
Well, he hasn't played, so they just said,
McCord.
Yeah, but Kyle's a big-time college, but he's coming off Syracuse and setting the record. He played at Ohio State. That's the level of their evaluation.
I was not on my bingo card for John to understand why Madden had Kyle McCord ahead of Tanner McKay.
Well, that's why they have a head. Well, he's a good college quarterback, you know. That's why I say, who gives a shit about Madden ratings?
They're disrespecting our boy Tanner McManning, Johnny Mac. Come on.
Well, they are disrespecting him. So, you know, Tanner wasn't as high profile as a college player as Kyle McCord. But he's far ahead of him. You know, he's had 2 years of development. I mean, and he's going to be the backup quarterback. So please don't get upset at Madden ratings. I can't tell you what to do, but
I love how you brought some objectivity to the Madden rating. You think they're as logical as you are, Johnny Mac? I don't know.
Well, no, they're not. That's the problem. So why get upset over them? They're dumb. Now, I realize the players value them way too much. Way too much.
Well, it's perception, John. You know, people care. That's just the nature of the beast in life.
Well, and nobody wants to get criticized, and nobody wants to get, you know, poor. But I think when I say they care, you know, when Saquon gets the necklace for being in the 99 club and Lane gets it, you know, I think, you know, that's like, you know, you can pump out your chest a little bit, but I think they know at the end of the day, like as Tanner walked off and joked, you know, they know it's shit. It doesn't matter, you know. Tune in Thursday night is what he said.
You could tell though his face. He was like, "What the hell? 61?" You know. And then right before they told him McCord's next to him, he's like, "Yeah, you'll be."
Yeah, I'm surprised they even put that
You
out
should
there
be in the 70s, yeah.
because it was so low. I'm surprised they put it out there, but
Yeah, no good. Wayne the Pain says Tanner Montana needs 2 series tonight. We'll see. I don't know if he'll get 2 or not.
he doesn't need anything, trust me, but he might get 2 series.
I don't know. He might be calling up and saying I need 2 series to prove that Madden stiff's wrong.
He might, what you really want is for him to start and get 1 series, because that'll mean they had an effective series. You don't want 2 series. 2 series means probably 3 and out.
Yeah.
And then he gets a second one.
That's true.
Probably one series, 10 plays, touchdown, something like that.
John, where is Mike Gill right now? Portugal?
Lisbon, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I got a comment yesterday because we always look for this. Whenever somebody goes away, we always seem to find a viewer, one of our viewers that is located where they are. So we got a comment yesterday, John, on our 10-day recap. All right. Rusty May Videos is the name. He says, "I'm a listener in Portugal. Thanks for all you do." It's pronounced Lisbon, by the way. LIZ-BUN. BT.
Well, we're all what's his name, by the way? I apologize.
Rusty May Videos.
Rusty May. We're all ugly Americans. I apologize. We do
Rusty May Videos. Here he is. Gotta love it. Rusty May, thanks for listening, brother.
Yeah. I'm closer than most. I know Lisbon's in Portugal. Lisbon. Most Americans would not know that. So there you go.
Rusty, I love you. I appreciate you for watching, but come on, man. Lisbon. Who the hell gives a shit?
Yeah,
but
we're American.
I know. I know.
The fact that I know it is a win. And I'm pretty good with geography, though. I've always been pretty good.
Yeah, good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Johnny Mac got an A in geography class and debate school, baby. Going back to your school days, Johnny Mac. Good stuff. Let's get our first commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue to dive into the preseason game. I do want to talk about some other things that aren't specifically on the preseason game, because there are still a lot of other good topics on this team that maybe won't be hashed out during the preseason game tonight, but we will follow along on them. And then in hour number 2, we'll talk to Mark Farzetta. So stay tuned, everybody. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, drop your comments down below. Any super chats will go to the top. We'll be right back in 3 minutes.
Welcome to the Jet Setters and the High Rollers, to the Shot Takers